I am joined today by Marguerite Levin, who is a bridge player, but also a professional clarinetist in the Boston area. So, welcome, Marguerite.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. I'm thrilled to be here and thank you for inviting me.
Well, I've always been fascinated by the link and the similarities between bridge and music, and so that's why I really wanted to talk to you. Let's start with just you as a bridge player. How did you learn bridge? What's your game like?
Well, as a kid growing up, we played games like Hearts and Spades and War and, all your typical card games. I didn't know anything about bridge other than those articles I saw in the newspaper growing up. My parents didn't play bridge. When I met my husband, this is about 20 years ago, and he wanted to get serious about bridge. He had played since college, but he didn't have a serious partner. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So he initially taught me on this website called Pogo. Well, this is before BBO. And I think he initially taught me strong twos, maybe. So, I mean, his bridge was outdated too. Anyway, that didn't last very long because I was in the throes of, getting tenure at my college job and, just being a musician. So fast forward to 10 years later, so around 2012, we moved to the Boston area. We moved here for his job. I quit my college job and kind of just started over again. And I decided, I'm going to get serious about the bridge thing. So I took a class with a teacher here in the area. His name's Bob Gaudette. He has a great beginning bridge following. And that's kind of how I got started. So that was in the fall of 2020. I played my first sectional in February of 2013. I'm a Ruby Life master and I have, I don't know, like 2,100 points.
Tell me about music. How did you get into the clarinet?
Well, I grew up in Texas and there was always music in my house. My parents sang and played piano. Nobody was a professional musician. I have a sister who's about 7 years older than me, and she played the flute, and I just wanted to play. I thought I wanted to play flute, but the band director said, "Oh, but you make such a special sound on the clarinet." So as soon as I heard that, ooh, a compliment, I was a gung ho. Okay, well, let's play the clarinet. I picked it up pretty easily. I definitely have a talent for it, but I would say that I have worked my butt off and still work to at this point, just maintaining and still trying to get better on one particular aspect of playing, which is articulation. So I found out, I love the competitiveness of it. Everybody's a winner nowadays, but in the 70s, it was okay to still be a loser. Everybody couldn't win, and so we had chair tests. We were getting a competition every week, and we had to have practice records. We had to turn in how many minutes, and I was an overachiever, and I always practiced more than was required. By eighth grade, I'm playing like a solo with piano accompaniment, and it's a lyrical piece, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, what's all that? I feel like moving. All of a sudden, I'm internalizing. I'm like, wow, I'm feeling stuff. What the heck is this? And so between the competitiveness of it and all this feeling that I got from listening and hearing an orchestra play for the first time, I was like, oh my God, that is just amazing. I have to do this. And so it pretty much, since 1975, I would say it's just been like gung ho, just straightforward. And there's always something new to learn or something to keep getting better at. That's why I love bridge, because they're both related, so related to each other, because there's always something to be working on. You never run out of hands. You never run out of music to play. And you have to revisit to improve on the things that are really hard.
With that level, what is the teacher grading you on?
Rhythm's always at the top of the list. And tone quality would have been in there, but it probably was beneath the rhythm and notes. So the right pitches, quality of sound. Musicality, yeah. And everybody's a little different in the hierarchy of those, but that's, I'm sure, what he was doing.
And when you turned in your practice logs, how much
Mhm.
as a 12-year-old were you practicing in?
Well, you're supposed to do 30 minutes a day. I always did at least 30, but I'm sure, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I might have done, a 45, 60 minutes. It was just easy. Especially, you had a book with all these different exercises that pinpointed different aspects of playing. And then, my family had hymnals and, I would find other things to play. So I probably practiced for 30 minutes and then had fun for 30 minutes.
What's the difference?
I'm not correcting myself. I'm not listening. You're just playing from the heart. I did that a few days ago. I had a really tough week last week because I was playing the piccolo clarinet called the E-flat clarinet. Very painful on Copeland 3. And then I was doing the Brahms Requiem, but it was a reduced orchestration. So I was basically playing all the French horn parts on the clarinet part. So anyway, my face, was really tired last week. I decided I was having a hard time being motivated to go practice. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go have fun. And so, I got my iPad out and I have this app called Tom Play, and it has all the accompaniments on there, and I can play along with that. It's kind of fun. You just have fun. You're not criticizing yourself. That's the big difference.
Nowadays, how much do you practice?
I'm older now, and I cannot do 3-hour practice days anymore and go do the rehearsal that night or go do, the jobs that weekend or whatever, because I've held the clarinet up for so long. My hand just starts to get tired. And in fact, when I was first starting to play more, when we lived in Belmont and I could play bridge 2 or 3 times a week at a club, plus do my practicing, plus teach the clarinet lessons, plus do performances on the weekend, and hold the cards at 3 games. I had to use one of those card holders because, it just it's a lot of wear and tear on the hands.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's as much just physical fatigue.
Yes. Yes. And you don't really want to admit it because when you've allowed your white hair to grow in, if you miss a note, you don't want people to think, oh, she's aging out. I worry about the ageism thing.
All right. So you get into high school. Did it ever take over your life?
Yeah, it was all consuming. I just knew as soon as like I told you, as soon as in junior high, felt what you feel from playing lyrical, gorgeous things, I was like, I have to, it's like a drug. I had to do this for the rest of my life. There were times that I was, gosh, maybe I really should be majoring in something else, but I was always petrified that I would hear something on the radio one day, Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony or whatever, something with a great clarinet part. And I would just, break down and fall apart because I had not pursued it and kept it up.
So there was an orchestra in your high school?
No, we only had band. I had to audition for the youth orchestra in town. They only took like 3 or 4 clarinet players. You're always auditioning, constant auditions, constant chair tests, always being tested.
And that's before they had the screens and blind audition.
When you're in junior high and high school, you would go into a room and it would always be a panel of band directors and they weren't looking at you.
Interesting.
Texas always was very good about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So at that point, how much were you practicing?
I probably was doing an hour a day in high school. And then I moved up to 3 hours once I was out of high school. But I was somebody who always had to work.
And you studied music in college?
Yeah, I did a music education degree at North Texas. And then I started my master's at Southern Methodist. But then I made the Navy band.
Did you have to join the Navy for that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got, by the time I'm 24, I got a full-time gig playing the clarinet. I was just like, whoa, it was really magical. And yes, I went through basic training.
So they audition you for the band before they make you join up.
Yeah, for the military bands in Washington, D.C. They have auditions just like orchestras do. They're behind the screen, the whole 9 yards. And then you have to then go back home and go to your local recruiter, and then you go to basic training.
Wow. How long were you in the Navy?
I just did 4 years. I like to say it got me out of Texas.
So that must be like your life. If you're in the Navy band, like, do you do other Navy sort of things?
No. It was an easy gig.
Were you ever on a ship?
I played christenings. So we did a christening in Baltimore, whatever ship that was. We flew to North Carolina because we played for the christening of the nuclear sub, the USS Asheville. You toured the country. You played a lot of funerals. You remember John Mitchell from Watergate?
No.
Okay. He was one of Nixon's cronies, and I played his funeral.
So what does a daily schedule look like when you're in the Navy band and this is your job?
Well, if it's concert band week, you're doing a 9 to 11:30 rehearsal, and then that's it for Navy. Then you go home, and some people teach privately. I was working on my master's degree, so I was often going to classes and then keeping up a 3-hour practice session.
And then do you practice on your own in
Yeah, yeah,
addition to that
yeah.
rehearsal?
So when I say I'm practicing 3 hours, that's me practicing 3 hours at home on my own because I'm going to graduate school.
So when you're practicing on your own like that, how much is
Yeah.
working on a specific piece and how much is just
Okay,
working
so
on
now
general?
now we're getting to the stuff that I think relates to to bridge. Okay, so I have a routine, and I share this with my students. More of my practice time, I would say that 35% of my practice is just the warm up stuff, the basics, long tones. And then I'm doing different types of scale work. It's not just major and minor scales. It might be whole tone scales, scales and thirds, returning scales, interrupted scales. I mean, I'm just, always, working the fingers, working on your facility. And then there's that whole articulation issue, which I mentioned earlier. That's like something that's like the hardest thing for me, being able to articulate to tongue really quickly on passages. So then I got to work my tongue muscle. Nowadays, I try not to do more than a half an hour on it because I know that, I've got a rehearsal that night, or I know that my hand starts to just wear out. And then I might bring up a couple of etudes, which are studies that all instrumentalists use that focus on a particular aspect of one's playing, be it legato, big intervals, phrasing. I mean, it's just, different things like that. So that could be easily an hour gone. And then maybe an hour on whatever music I have coming up this weekend.
So when you're practicing music, how do you evaluate yourself during your solo practice?
Well, I mean, I'm constantly listening. I mean, you have to actually listen. When I'm practicing clarinet, I've got the listening ears on. And so you got to notice that going between the G and the B flat above the staff, I'm not quite hearing a smooth transition there. And then it's taking, half a minute and just working the interval. You can't do the fun practice, which is just play through. You have to listen to yourself.
At this point, you've been doing this for decades
Yep.
and you're putting in hours every day. Do you think you are still getting better or just maintaining your level?
Okay, so I'm in my early 60s. I still think I'm getting better. 60 is the new 40 as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I still feel like a sponge. I got so much to learn, and I'm looking forward to just soaking everything I can in the next 20 years before I think I'm old.
So let's compare yourself as a clarinet player today
Yeah.
to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You think you're a stronger player, better player today than back then?
Yeah, because I'm a great ensemble player. I feel like all that experience has paid off, and that I can get a call. This has happened to me many times in my career where a high profile ensemble says, "Oh, principal this, second player this, had a family death. We need you." And I just pop in and play a performance. Wagner's Das Rheingold at the Kennedy Center with no rehearsal. Somebody had had a death in family, and I just popped in and played second clarinet, on a Wagnerian opera I had never played before. I mean, that's crazy, but that's what musicians are trained to do. I'm sure my neighbors wonder, does she ever do anything besides all these scales? It's super important. It keeps my facility.
So if a music director was holding an audition and behind the screen they heard Marguerite today and they heard Marguerite 20 years ago.
They would hear an expressive musical performance, somebody who sounds experienced, but somebody who is not flawless. So I'm not like the student who is in the practice room in college practicing 6 hours a day because they don't have to work. I never practiced like that because I had to work. No, they're going to win the audition every day of the week because they're going to go in. Everything is going to be right in its place. It's not till they start playing with the ensemble that their lack of experience comes to the fore.
So technically, maybe 20 years ago you were stronger, but expressively today you're stronger.
I would say I'm the same expressively. I would say that I'm a better ensemble player than 20 years ago. It's about being able to react when the pitch is just a little off. I know whether to go up or down. to manipulate the pitch. When I see a measure coming up that, oh, I don't think I'm going to quite be able to tongue every single one of those notes, I know how to make it work, to make it sound like I tongued every single one of those notes. I've learned some more tricks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there any parallel between being a good ensemble musician and being a good bridge partner? Like you're saying that being in an ensemble is different than being a soloist, and it's
Right.
a different sort of skill.
Right. For me, the thing that's similar is the whole practice thing and listening to your partner, being willing to compromise.
How does compromise show itself in a musical ensemble?
For instance, I know that the flute is extremely sharp on some notes up in their top range. If I'm playing the octave below, help this person out for God's sakes and play it a little higher. Okay, it may be that, yeah, if I go to a tuner, it says this is where it is. Suck it up, get the pitch down. But I mean, it's very difficult for a flute player up there. I mean, it's not just put your fingers down. There's all this stuff you've got to do with the way the air is blowing, your throat. I mean, there's a lot of things involved. We help each other out. I mean, you have to. But we're always compromising.
Once you get to the professional level, let's say we're at the New York Philharmonic, where
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
What differentiates the first chair from the second chair from the third chair? Like if it was they were behind a screen auditioning, could you tell the difference between the guy in the front and the guy in the back?
I bet not.
No.
Not at that level.
No. Is the discipline that it took to become a professional clarinetist informed your bridge study?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, from the get go, I have practiced the bridge. So I would say that I easily spend 30 minutes a day practicing bridge, and that might be doing those hands on Bridge Master. I'm not very good. Terrible about reading, but I feel like once I stop teaching so much clarinet, I think I'll have more time in the day to devote an hour to the actual study part of it, not the playing. Right now it's a lie. I want to play the hands. I want to play the hands. I always do a day-long tournament, some bridge master. Occasionally I read an article. I've started writing down what I need to do to get to the next level.
Let's say I bring my 12-year-old to you, who
Mhm.
seems like, has some talent, and their goal is to be a first chair clarinetist in a major orchestra. What sort of training regimen do you put together for them? Like, what is their life for the next 10, 20 years going to look
Well,
like?
I still think a 12-year-old should still be a 12-year-old. I still think it's good to study other subjects and to be well read and well traveled if you can afford it, because I think that helps your art. You might find an Eastern European, conservatory trained person that would give your 12-year-old, a 3-hour regimen. But, I won't do that because I think that causes burnout. And you can kind of tell, but when the kid comes into the lessons every week, whether they're really into this or not. I've had many talks, with parents that, I don't think your child is really into this. Yes, they've got the talent, but talent's a small part of it. You got to work you have to have a fire. You have to be willing to work. How many bridge players, who just want to have fun and just want the social aspect of it? I mean, I
So,
love all that too, but if you
yeah,
want to get good at this, you've got to do some work.
yeah. So if this 12-year-old kid is gung ho and
Yep.
they want to do it,
Okay.
you're
I'm
you're
giving
recommending.
I'm giving them a warm up routine. I'm giving them etudes. I mean, they're getting a practice regimen. And then I'm saying, okay, then you got to audition for one of the local youth orchestras or a youth wind ensemble there, so that you're always exposing yourself to others outside your little comfortable school band, your school orchestra. You have to find out what the rest of the world is doing. So you have to always be auditioning. You got to listen. You have to go to concerts. You have to go to the local orchestra, the chamber music, and you've got to go to a summer festival. Always exposing yourself to other players.
As a professional musician, if you go to a concert, right? Let's say the Boston
Huh?
Symphony Orchestra
Yeah.
is doing a piece you love. How much are you just enjoying it? How much are you learning?
When I go to concerts nowadays, I'm there totally to enjoy it. I'm not critical whatsoever. But boy, one is that way in their 20s and 30s, probably even early 40s, because you're so intent on improving yourself that you're trying to figure out what they're doing. But in my 20s, I wasn't hearing things critically, probably still, even though I was probably trying to. I was more so like in a smaller. It was easier to hear. Like if you heard a chamber music recital, you might notice, oh, my teacher squeaked. I think my teacher just played a little sharp, or whatever. And that's good too, because then they realize, you are never going to have. I don't think anyone's ever going to have a flawless performance. There's always going to be some little note. I just wish I had played just a little higher on that note. It sounded a little pitchy to me.
I think that musicians make for really good bridge players.
Me too.
Why do you think that is?
Especially ensemble players. An ensemble musician is a multitasker. So imagine that, okay, you have practice, so you can do this fine without a lot of thought. But you know that certain notes are sharp or flat on your instrument. So you got to think about that while you're playing. And then you're thinking about when the oboe comes in here, I got to do this. Oh, and I got to make sure that I tongue articulate just as short as this one. Oh, and then I have this solo in the next measure with the first violin. I mean, there's so much stuff going on. And then you got to look at the conductor. So you're trying to make sure you're playing all the right notes, that you're playing in tune with the different things that are going, that you're playing in the same style, that you're phrasing this way, that we're breathing at the same time in certain places. There's just so much going on. So then when you're playing bridge, you're like, okay, you're analyzing your hand, what you're going to do. Then the dummy comes down. Then you're counting winners or you're counting losers, then you're trying to determine, well, they did this, so they must be the one that's leading from the high card. I mean, so much going on in a hand of bridge, and it's the same thing with music. It's like, there's so much stuff going on.
Is there also an element of like pattern recognition?
Well, for playing music, that's another reason why you do all that warm-up stuff on your instrument, all the different types of scales there are to play. Because then when you're playing the music, it's just like, there are things I see, oh, that's just a chromatic passage. I don't even have to read the notes. I just noticed that that's chromatic so that I can look at the next measure, which is really the hard measure.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's very similar in bridge. As a not very good musician, I have to look at every note and I have to tap it out, the rhythm, if it's irregular, whereas you're already on to the next measure.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like that playing a bridge hand. I think that when I look at a hand compared to my students, they get focused on certain elementary things that are automatic for me. Right. And so they're like, okay, we need to draw trumps, and they have to think about this suit combination. But I just know the suit combination. And so I'm on to the next thing of what are the entries like, and this 9 might complicate things or whatever. And Mexstroth is a level ahead of me, or 2 or 3, right? And so the things that I'm focused on, he sees immediately.
Right.
And he's on to the next level. And yeah, I think good bridge players do think in terms of patterns, in terms of 5-4-2-2 and 6-3-2-2 and things like that. And like reading music, you see, all right, there's a triplet. I know what that is, right? 4 quarter notes. Okay. Oh, then here's a half note mixed in, whatever. I think you're thinking in patterns in a similar way.
Rhythmically, for sure, and note wise too. Like.
That's
when
an
it's
interval.
like
that's
it's
a third.
Oh, that's a measure of thirds. Oh, that's just a measure of fourths. I've practiced those a gazillion times for the last 4 decades. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wish I did that in bridge.
Yeah, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'm thinking about suit combinations, like, if I know I have this 8-card fit, most of the time it's going to be 3-2. Occasionally it's a 4-1, and you got to do a test here to see. But I'm not good at that. I wish I were a lot better.
Right. And I wish that I were a lot better at looking at a measure of music and being like, oh, those are all thirds.
Yeah.
And I have to go C, E, G.
Right. No, I don't do that.
Exactly.
But I wish I could figure out how to do that part of my music. How is it that I've been playing this long and I feel like I'm still just so inept? I'm talking about bridge here.
Yeah. I mean, I've been playing piano for 30 years and I'm inept.
Oh, I doubt that.
Well, at reading music, I'm very poor.
Well, so maybe you're just not a sight reader.
Yeah, But what happened for me in music is I had this great ear and I just leaned on it. And so I didn't spend the time working on these other things. I did the fun stuff. I played the Beatles instead of playing Bach. And I would learn a piece and then just play that piece over and over again and know
Yeah.
it 100%. There are certain pieces that I played so I can play blindfolded. But if you put the music in front of me, it would be almost meaningless.
Wow, so you really are playing by ear. So I wished I were better at that. Like if you told me one of my favorite sting tunes, Fragile, Marguerite, play that, I would play a bunch of wrong notes trying to pick it out.
It would take me a minute, but I would get it. But if you gave me the sheet music, it wouldn't help me very much.
Oh yeah, me, I'd be like all over it. I mean, I'm like a good sight reader. And in fact, I think my Navy band audition, I came close to just acing the sight reading because I play with no fear.
Yeah.
Speaking of confident, boy, is that a big deal in bridge. And that's a huge big deal in music. You cannot perform unless you have confidence. And boy, is it important for the beginner and intermediate player having confidence.
One of the themes that I keep hearing as I'm doing this project this year is that actual bridge skill is not what differentiates most people. It's how well they actually play, how much of their talent they get at the table. Does that resonate for you, for musicians?
Yeah, because it's like once you're at the table or at the performance, you did all the study, you did all the practice, whatever. Then you just go in and play your game, and you cannot be cluttering yourself with thoughts that aren't helpful in the moment. You got to just like study and practice enough so that you're not worried, oh, I should have spent more time on my slam bitting, or I should know minor wood better than I do, or have I, to this day, I'm still like not confident about all the ways to use Lebensall. I have both of them on my card, but I'm just like, okay, do I have that straight? Do I really have Lebensall straight? Okay, so if I got to really study and know my stuff, because if you've got any of like, oh, I should have done a little bit more of this on the day of the performance, the day of the tournament, you have to, that all has to go away at the table.
What do you do when you're playing a concert to make sure that you are there in the moment and getting the best out of yourself?
I wasn't good about this probably until I was in my 40s, learning to compartmentalize. And I think this would, like, everybody's got whatever they're dealing with. Could be family issues, financial issues, what's going on in the world, right? All that has to go away. It's just like, because they're still going to be there. Whatever's going on in your life in any given day, it's still going to be there once this bridge match is over with, just like it's still going to be there when I get done with my 3-hour opera. You're just learning to shut it out. You can't have clutter. You can't have clutter to do well at either of these things.
Do you have any like performance day rituals or anything that help you with that?
I still do my routine, my warm-up routine. So I might, a half hour of just my basic stuff. If it's a difficult piece, I'll go over those pieces slowly. I won't do them always at tempo. If I do them at tempo, I'll do it like once. Because usually I have so much adrenaline going on that day that can kick it too fast, or I just don't play cleanly if I do it too many times. Just more, I practice slowly more than I do fast.
I've always wondered when I show up and, 5 minutes before the performance starts and all the musicians are on stage practicing.
Yeah, they're going over the difficult passages.
Yeah, is that the equivalent of like a pitcher going out into the bullpen and warming up their arm?
Right.
How much of that is physical, like getting your fingers loose and your lips loose?
Being a musician it's very athletic. It's just, making sure the fingers are working, making sure that you're taking, if it's a long lyrical phrase you're working on, you're just making sure, oh yeah, I'm taking the right amount of air and I'm eliminating it at the right pace so that I can get to the end of this phrase.
Do you think that's something bridge players should do?
Before a tournament, that morning, we're still in our hotel room. I'll go on bridge base and just play a few hands. And I call it warm up.
Yeah.
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 I don't know if that helps. I think it's about getting my count, because bridge is so much about numbers and counting, and I'm just getting my counting brain on.
Yeah, it's always been weird to me that bridge players don't warm up. Like I've never warmed up.
I feel that way with playing. Most wind players, definitely feel that way, that you've got to get the muscles warmed up. And to me, your brains, you got to get your muscles warmed up. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
you play a few hands?
Yeah, it's something I'm experimenting with, just getting your phone out and playing a couple
Yeah,
hands.
I always do that.
All right. Are there any other bridge music parallels?
Here's an idea for you. Do you find that occasionally you just need to take a day off from bridge? Because I totally do that in music. Yeah, like especially it's what? A Sabbath. It's just that, okay, say you've been playing some games online and they haven't been so hot for you, haven't had the results you want. Sometimes I just feel like you just need a total day off. Like yesterday, I did not play one single note on the clarinet because it had been a really heavy weekend, and I was just like, okay, I need a no clarinet day, physically and also my brain. And I've noticed, and I'm worse about it with bridge for some reason. I hardly ever skip a day.
I've always been a huge believer in the Sabbath. Not, I think that the ancients were onto something, that 6 days on, 1 day off is a really good
Yeah,
schedule. And I also love the idea of sabbatical or jubilee, that, you take so many years and then you need a little break.
right.
It's like leaving a field fallow for a season.
Yeah,
It needs that time to
yeah,
regenerate. And I'm not good enough about it. I end up working around my student schedules. And so, some of them work and, we can only do it on Saturday or
right,
Sunday or whatever.
right, right.
But I'm a huge believer in taking that day off. And if I get knocked out at a big tournament, my preference is always to take the day off. Now, I'm also there to play bridge.
You're just saying if you didn't make the finals, that one day you'd go explore the city or
I
whatever.
would rather do that. Now, I
Yeah.
usually end up playing
Uh-huh.
because my partner took time off work and he wants to
All
play
right.
bridge and we want to practice. But I think these 10-day tournaments really are a grind.
I can't imagine because I only do like 3 or 4.
Well, thank you, Marguerite. This has been really interesting, and I think the parallels are really fascinating. Just because I think music players do make good bridge players. All right. Well, thank you again. I think a lot of people are going to find this interesting.
Okay.
I know I
Well,
did.
okay. Well, thanks for asking me. It was fun.